Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Horsington on behalf of the Strathmore Speaker Series. Thanks so much for stopping in here tonight for our 8th event of the 2021 season, 2nd event of the fall season. We want to thank the Onondaga Free Library for partnering with us to provide the technical assistance we need to bring you this program. We couldn't do it without their expertise and generosity. The Strathmore Speaker Series is made possible through the support of the City of Syracuse, the Gifford Foundation, and the Greater Strathmore Neighborhood Association. Our guest speaker tonight is Eric Persons of Central Current, a new nonprofit, nonpartisan, and independent digital news agency based in Syracuse. He is an independent consultant who specializes in program development, community engagement, and public policy. Eric's work with the Central Current organization focuses on strategic planning and development. 2 decades in developing and managing initiatives in higher education, economic development, public health, urban planning, and international affairs have prepared him well for the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. Following Eric's discussion of the project and the role of local journalism in creating an informed and engaged citizenry, we will have a brief Q&A. So stick around. And now, please welcome our speaker, Eric Persons.
Well, thank you, Mary Beth. I really appreciate that introduction and I also want to thank Patty Black for reaching out and inviting me here today. I'd much rather be in front of everybody talking and taking questions and having a dialogue, but the circumstances are what they are, and I'm happy to be here. And I do want to leave plenty of time for some questions and answers, so we can have a good dialogue, because we do want your feedback as we get going with this organization. I also want to point out that our founder and chair of the board, Tony Malavend, I believe he's joining us today. He can also answer some questions in the Q&A period as well. For today's format for today in this talk, I'm going to first briefly introduce Central Current to all of you, who we are and our mission and vision, and explain a little bit why we are doing this. Then I want to get into a little bit more, as the program description mentioned, a conversation about how local journalism, local news is changing to really help and impact citizen engagement in the community, and to be more informed citizens to help strengthen our democracy. There's a lot of conversation about that all across this country, if not the world. And we are just part of a growing nonprofit news movement that is taking that quite seriously and are really focused on the role of news in a democracy. And then last, I'll come back to our mission and vision and explain a little bit more detail about some of the steps that we are taking to set our organization up and eventually launch an online publication over the next coming months. So here's our mission and vision. I hope you all can see the slides here. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan news organization. We launched our effort earlier this spring in April with a website announcing our intentions to launch an online digital publication. There has been a large movement of creating nonprofit digital news organizations utilizing the internet to reach more people and engage more people in different ways, to really focus in on the issues of local communities. And that's what we want to do. We really want to provide balanced, fact-based news, opinion, and analysis in a nonpartisan, independent way about life here in Central New York and the issues and events that impact our lives. We really want to be an engaged and inclusive resource for news that strengthens civic engagement and democratic governance of our systems, and ultimately, in doing so, help build Central New York into a prosperous and healthy community. We're going to do this primarily through digital distribution of news content. What that means is having a website, having email, having social media, perhaps even some text messaging, reaching people in ways that they are reaching now because they're all carrying cell phones or other devices, and that's how we get information. And so we want to be utilizing that technology and how people are receiving information. But also importantly, the digital environment has also created this human separation, the social separation, and that we want to also kind of resolve. And we want to be engaging communities directly in understanding the issues so that we could bring sort of that human element to news and digestion of news and the issues back into the public space. What's really driving this is the way the internet has changed everything over the past 20, if not 30 years. People want free access to news or information. They want it on demand and on any device, as I just said. And as an impact, that has had an impact on news and media organizations, particularly at the local level and in markets, small, medium markets like Syracuse and Central New York. The traditional model to sustain news media on a commercial level, at least, was through subscriptions and advertising, and that just doesn't work anymore. Most of the advertising is going to the Facebooks and Googles of the world, not directly to media organizations, and so commercial news outlets are having a hard time and dealing with the legacies of the infrastructure and the model in which they have presented news for the last few decades. Add that, anybody now can publish on the internet. You don't have to be a journalist. You don't even have to uphold standards of accuracy or accountability or thoroughness of reporting. You could just put information out there. So there's a lot of problems in terms of accuracy and in the intentions of people when they're putting information out there, and really how that has impacted civic discourse and how that manifested itself, especially over the last few years in the political climate, is that we've seen a lot of partisanship, a lot of social divisions, and anonymous influences, and that is fueling distrust in how news media is distributed. Local news, as I said, has been hit hard. In particular, I pulled this cartoon out of a newspaper, I think out in Denver, because I'm going to make the assumption that we all kind of agree that news and being informed citizens is essential for a healthy democracy. I'm just going to make that assumption. I'm not going to get into specific details or analysis of why that is, but that's been a lesson that as Americans we have been learning ever since grade school, and hopefully that's something that we all accept is the importance of the media having a free and independent press. But at the local level, in markets like here, the economic pressures that I mentioned a few minutes ago are forcing newsrooms to downsize, or if not, close their newsrooms altogether. Journalistic standards are eroding. Commercial and political influences are growing in terms of the content that you see, either on legitimate news media or illegitimate media on social media. Entertainment, sensationalism is replacing investigative reporting and hard news coverage of issues that really matter to local communities. And communities across the country, as a result, are losing responsible organizations. So that's really the genesis of why we thought it was necessary to create an organization like this, not to take away from some of the other nonprofit news organizations that we have in this town. We're blessed to actually have 3 NPR stations broadcasting local news in this market. WAER, WCNY, and WRBO. I'm actually located here at the headquarters of WCNY. Behind me is the broadcast facilities of Classic FM, and they're partnering with us. So I don't want to lose sight of some of the great media outlets that we do have out there. But really our interest is to look and understand what gaps of coverage exist in this community and how we as a newsroom can begin to fill those gaps. Just a couple of other things that kind of highlight, it's just not me talking about sort of the negative aspects of where we see news media in markets like ours. Gallup just last week released a poll showing that Americans have a massive distrust for news media, the second lowest on record for this year in their recent polling. The record low for faith and trust in news media, most not surprisingly, was just a few years ago during the 2016 election cycle. So 36% of Americans have a great deal or fair amount of trust, only 36%. Breaks down a little bit differently across partisan lines. But even those that tend to agree with the media, the independents and Democrats, you see that kind of waning. In our efforts to understand the environment here within Central New York, when we launched our website, we developed a community survey to ask Central New Yorkers what they think of the state of media, so that we can better be informed when we begin to develop our editorial strategy. A little bit better on a local level in terms of the level of trust that people have for local newspapers and local TV and radio news, but still 40%, 42, 44% of people having negative opinions, that's still probably not a good comfort level to have. Probably more telling, we asked a direct question, how well do you think local news is doing in this community to cover the issues that matter to you? We had a little fun with the answers on this, but if you see, overwhelmingly negative, 40%, it's okay, but it could do better. Even slightly more people thinking, really, it's not all that good. Even a few people saying it subtracts from their knowledge of all things. So in that sense, there's a lot for us to be doing. I think a great opportunity in this town, particularly the amount of talent that we have in this town, the amount of journalists, the feeder school that we have with the Newhouse School. There's a lot of things that we can be doing in this town to improve the state and quality of local news. And there is innovation occurring. I may have referenced this in the beginning, but we are just joining a movement that's been going on really for the past 5 years or so of nonprofit news organizations that have been flourishing, not just in this country, but around the world. And they're being developed largely through the ease of being able to go online and publish. A lot of these are journalists that are leaving commercial news outlets, starting up their own outlets, working and engaging in communities. And they're deciding to not be motivated by commercial or political interests. So nonprofit newsrooms, they do have a commitment to independent and journalistic integrity. They are community owned, they are locally owned, and they are engaged and responsible to the needs of their audiences as a result. They don't get funding unless they can prove to their donors and to their sponsors that they are engaged in serving the community. Nonprofit newsrooms also build on dynamic revenue models that commercial entities just have a hard time tapping into, largely because of the philanthropic support. Who's going to go donate to a commercial enterprise that's producing news content when you may get a tax deduction and support an organization that is committed to serving the community? In addition to that, nonprofit organizations can obtain sponsorships from the business and foundation community. They enroll in membership programs. Many of you are familiar, maybe members of the local NPR stations that are here in this market. So there's basically different revenue streams that nonprofit organizations can tap into that just aren't available necessarily to commercial entities. Nonprofit newsrooms also tend to be a lot more entrepreneurial. They employ local journalists, and they work with audiences, and they're more experimental in how they connect with those audiences to be as effective as they can in serving the needs of the community. And as a result, what you're seeing in a lot of this is a lot of innovation in the relationship that journalists and newsrooms have with organizations through civic engagement, through multimedia storytelling, and through greater representation of the diverse communities or diverse populations in their communities. A very deliberative attempt by journalists to work with underserved and underrepresented communities. In that sense, what you're seeing is a return of this idea of journalism being a really strong force for strengthening democracy and civic engagement. Relationships, really, because the internet has forced, this level of interconnectivity that we've never seen before. Newsrooms can't have a passive relationship with their audiences. So if you think of sort of the traditional model of a newsroom, you never knew how decisions were being made about what stories were being selected and why they were being selected and why they were being published. Audiences and people are now beginning to question that because they have that direct communication device back into news organizations. So journalists and newsrooms are having to adapt, and that's actually a good thing, to have a strong direct relationship with the communities that they're serving, so that they better understand what kind of issues and news stories are important to those communities. So audience and feedback commentary is kind of your standard MO of a lot of the new organizations that are beginning to thrive in the local space. They're also engaging directly, as I said earlier, creating that human touch that you may not have in a digital space. So how do you kind of create that social condition of really engaging people on the issues that matter to them? Well, invite them to events, create programs that engage those audiences, have them directly talk to the journalists, have newsmakers come out to forums and take questions directly from the communities and the people that they serve as public officials. Some organizations are going so far to directly engage community in the editorial process. And lastly, newsrooms are also understanding, because of their connections into the community, that they can be conveners with community partners. So one example of one publisher out in Ohio gave me in talking with him. This was a publisher servicing largely a rural community. They ran a series on rural poverty and the related conditions of malnutrition and infant mortality in that area. So it was kind of natural for them to partner with human service organizations, not necessarily to be directly involved in providing services to people who are afflicted with malnutrition or may have young babies. But they connected those organizations directly to those communities that need that help and that support. And so in that way, they were a convener. And again, they could go back and say, this is how we're fulfilling our mission and serving the community, by being able to connect information and resources that people may not otherwise know how to navigate. And then my last point about the nonprofit sector is that what you're seeing as a result of all this is a much stronger democratization of local news. And what I mean by that is you're making local news, more accessible to everybody, and particularly underserved and underrepresented populations. So there's been a lot of focus, especially with the issues that we've been seeing over the last few years, to really focus in on ensuring that news operations, actually across a lot of sectors in industry, of reevaluating what it really means to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And organizations are making very deliberative efforts, news organizations in particular, to serve and to go into minority neighborhoods and work with them to understand what issues, and to employ the journalists so that ultimately the news product that comes out and has their voice, includes their perspectives and their experiences. And in some cases, and I'll give you a couple of examples, a couple of nonprofit organizations that's getting a lot of national attention, they are directly engaging those communities in the editorial process, in the development of news content. In some ways, that's empowering residents of an inner city to actually write the stories and to train them on how do you write stories, or how do you go into your neighborhood and capture and document what's going on through video or photography, and creating the content that they're then distributing back into those communities. In other ways, for example, rural populations are increasingly not being served and covered by local news media. It may be working with somebody who actually lives in a rural community, when typically you may not have the resources to have a full-time journalist in your newsroom to go out. So you work with a freelancer, you develop somebody who's living in these communities to cover the issues that are important to them. And at the end of the day, you're sharing them with a regional audience so that they better understand what their neighbors are feeling and hearing and the issues that they're experiencing. So just to kind of give you a few examples of what is out there that we've been looking at locally, the Ithaca Voice started I think 5 or 6 years ago by a junior at Cornell who found an opportunity to do something a little bit differently to cover the issues in Ithaca and Tompkins County. His name was Jeffrey Stein. Jeff has moved on to higher pastures. He's now one of the lead politics reporters for the Washington Post, but he's left a great legacy down in Ithaca with the Ithaca Voice, which has continued to evolve. They're more of a general news organization covering all the issues that impact Ithaca and Tompkins County. Similar general news-like organizations in the nonprofit space at a national level that get sort of the attention as being sort of the benchmark models. One in San Diego called The Voice of San Diego. And you could see over here kind of the drop-down menu of all the different kinds of issues that they are covering for that community. But most importantly, I think I want to point out that it's not just print news. If you look on that menu board, just as important to the stories, you're seeing activities that they are doing to engage the community, either in a multimedia sense through podcasts or other ways to communicate to people. And they're also having events to directly engage their constituencies in Southern California. Same thing with the Min Post up in Minnesota. In fact, if you look at that menu bar right below the main menu, what do you see? Come be part of an event, free tickets. Engage with these experts, these cultural leaders, community leaders directly in our community. So they're not only just producing content, they're also finding ways to connect their audiences directly to the newsmakers and the activities that are going on in their communities. A couple, what I would say more hyper local examples of what nonprofits are doing in the sense of democratizing local news. Cityside is a publisher in the Bay Area in California. They publish the Oakland side and Berkeley side in the Berkeley-Oakland area, two distinct communities in that city and that community. They have a team of reporters that routinely go out, talk to residents, understand what issues are important to them, and come back, and that is their editorial strategy. They're responding to the issues that people are directly telling them that matter to their neighborhoods. And so they have routine meetings, community newsrooms, where people are invited, they talk with the journalists, they get the feedback, and then they go back and report. Even at a more hyper level, City Bureau in Chicago, and by the way, you can go online, just citybureau.com or citybureau.org and experience this. City Bureau doesn't, from what I understand, doesn't even have a journalist on the staff. They have an editorial staff, but what they do, they are primarily focused on the south side of Chicago, largely minority community, a very diverse community. They empower and train the residents to produce the news stories themselves. So they have these collectives of citizens that are developing news, putting it back on their web and distributing it out to their neighborhood. And then they have a routine community newsroom every week where everybody comes together, again, shares information about what's going on in their neighborhood, identifies gaps in information that they want to know, and they go out and they create stories to serve the communities in which they live in. Another one, which is kind of very unique in Detroit, Outlier Media, very much digital, to the point that they are working, again, largely focused on minority communities and underserved populations in Detroit. They're sending out their news through text messaging because they know that is a device or a way that people communicate in the neighborhoods that they are trying to reach. So they got a story, they text it out to people. You know, you could go on their website and see some of the stories, but their primary vehicle is sending out text messages because that's been the most effective for that, as they see, in reaching the communities they serve. So we're seeing a lot of experimentation. We're seeing a lot of innovation going on in this space, and we want to be part of that movement here in Central New York. I'm just going to throw this mission and vision statement that I shared with you earlier and to emphasize, I think one of the things that we've learned over this process the last few months is that we really want to be an engaged and inclusive resource of information that is going to strengthen our community, both from a civic engagement perspective as well as from a democratic government perspective. A little bit more specifics about how we're going about this. We've developed a framework for developing this operation, and I want to emphasize it's a framework. We don't have specific editorial strategies fleshed out yet because we want to listen to the community to understand what are the issues that are important to them. So if you get on our website, I encourage you to take our survey and tell us what you think. What we are moving forward with is a set of key values and principles about journalism that we want to stay consistent as we continue to develop our organization and eventually our newsroom. We are committed to uphold the highest standards of journalism. We are going to remain independent, which means we're going to have a firewall between any of our revenue generating activities, our business operations, our board. All decisions will rest with our editorial staff and the journalists that we employ. We want to be thorough. We want to focus on investigative news and in-depth coverage of news because we see that is the one significant gap in this community in terms of how stories are covered or not covered. We are going to be very local. Our journalists, we want them to be part of the community and engaged in the community. And we want to do that in a way that's very inclusive so that ultimately one measure of our success is that our staff is going to be diverse and the content of our news is going to be very representative of our diversity throughout our community. And we want to be active partners. We want to be working with other organizations because ultimately those organizations will help us connect to other people in this community. And they will help us inform what kind of news that we need to be developing. So this is going to be not a top-down approach to editorial decision-making, but we want to be a very thorough citizen of this community and represent the news in a way that reflects the needs and issues of Central New Yorkers. Again, a little bit more of our values and principles: balance, nonpartisanship, and independent. We want to be collaborative, creative, and very complete in the stories that we share. One of the reasons why I chose to be down here at WCNY is because Mitch Gelman, the president of WCNY, has actually offered us an opportunity to plant our roots here at their headquarters, largely so for the opportunity that we can partner with them and their journalists and producers on some of the content. So we're going about this very collaboratively as we set this up. Again, emphasizing also on our diversity. And diversity is not just going to be a catchphrase. We want the people that we employ from diverse communities to have an ownership in what we do. This is going to be a very lateral, collaborative effort where people will have an ability to influence the editorial process. So we're going to be working as a team. And then last, everything that we do, we're committed to having it free and open access to the Central New York community. Our startup process, how are we going to get going on this? Well, right now we're in the process of raising $1 million. Best practices say that you should probably have 2 or 3 years of funding in place before you start, so you could have a very strong foundation to your ship and be able to hire staff and have a very good level of content from the gate. We're in the process right now we posted a job for our editor-in-chief. We hope to have somebody on board in the next few months who will actually start developing the editorial strategy and building our newsroom. When we do launch, we'll probably be relatively small. We want to build on those successes as we grow. So our focus is going to be on Syracuse and Onondaga County. And then we have a 5-year plan to increase the scope of our coverage to communities throughout Central New York. We're not looking, as I said earlier, to compete with other media, but to fill the gaps in local news coverage that we can identify with the help of the community. And then news will be distributed, as I said earlier, through our website, through email, through social media, and through community engagement. The revenue model, I touched on this earlier, so I'll just kind of go quickly through this. We're going to be philanthropy driven, which means that we're going to be locally owned. We also hope to tap into national foundations, but national foundations, they want to make sure that we have local ownership and support before they're willing to invest their dollars into what we're doing. When we do develop our product or our publication, we will be active in going out to the business community, to foundations, to solicit sponsorship opportunities and underwriting, but not advertising. Any agreement that we have with our sponsors, even with our donors, we're going to emphasize the level of independence that our newsroom will have so that we all have a baseline understanding of the lack of influence that money will have in our news operations. We're going to have programs and events that'll give other opportunities for people to sponsor and bring revenue to the organization. And we also want to partner with organizations like we have here with WCNY, because after all, everybody's resources are limited, and it's better to do things in partnership than to do things parochially. On that note, I'll wrap up. I hope you all visit us online at centralcurrent.org. Again, this website, it's not a publication, but it's a base camp for sharing information about ourselves, about the nonprofit news movement, a lot of that material that I've discussed today. We want to hear from you, hear your ideas. Please take our survey. And there's other opportunities to just drop us an email. And if you even have submit some story ideas, we'll take those as well. Mm-hmm. So on that note, I'm going to stop my screen share, and I would love to take some questions.
All right, so yeah, if you guys want to, please place your type your questions in the chat, and I will read them out to Eric. And I guess while we're waiting for them to come, one thing that came to my mind while you were talking about social media is something that I guess in the library field, there's been a lot of discussion of, is that everyone has a shorter attention span for actually reading and digesting the content. Do you think that is having also a negative impact on why, everybody's got to squeeze some idea that's bite-sized into, the first sentence, because that's all anyone will ever read, and how that,
I think it will have a negative impact as so far as organizations that want to go that route will sacrifice content and quality and thoroughness. And we're seeing some examples now where you can do that without sacrificing that. Axios, if you're not familiar with that, I suggest you check them out. You may have heard them. They have some programming partnerships with HBO. It was formed 2017 by some reporters out of Politico, all with this idea, to your point, Scott, that people are digesting news and information in different ways. So they describe their reporting as, I think, quote, smart brevity. And, when I read their articles, I can think back to my grad school days looking at public policy, and we were being told, write a memo on 1 page or less on how do you save the world. And that's kind of what they're doing. They're trying to report a story in a short order, because they know people are on their cell phones and devices. But what they're doing is building layers of content into that. So they will say, here's a story. Here's the most important issue that you need to understand. And here are the 3 or 4 bullet points about why that's an important issue. And here's a link then, if you want to learn more, click this link. And so it's kind of interesting. I don't know if the book, I think the book's still out about whether or not they're going to be successful on that, but that's a period of innovation that I think is kind of interesting and that we're tracking. And Axios is also getting into the local news space as well. There's 4 or 5 communities that they're beginning to enter.
Cool. Okay, so we have our first question from the audience, or from our participants, is from Marianne Tisco. And she asks, as you've been giving presentations and sharing your story about Central Current, what kind of feedback have you been getting? And have you received any feedback or any attention at all from Syracuse.com?
I would say probably some attention, nothing formal from Syracuse.com. We're not here to compete with them. They're going to do what they need to do. And I don't think that should be a factor in our editorial process or strategy. We're just going to focus on the gaps and opportunities that we see, and then move forward from that perspective. In terms of feedback that we've been getting, and I'll address some of the issues that people are telling us. I think the big ones are local government, economic development, social justice issues, criminal justice issues as well. Those are some of the issues that have been probably the more popular issues that we're seeing. We have some questions about, our local news outlets, should they be vehicles for national stories? And that's not really where people are going. So I don't think we'll be aggregators of some national content, but more focused on the local community.
Okay, our next question comes from Patty Black, and she says she's very excited about your project. And do you plan to work with Report for America? And will you accept submissions from local non-journalist residents?
I just submitted our application to Report for America last week, or 2 weeks ago was their deadline. So and we've had some preliminary conversations with them. So yes, we hope to be working with them. For those who don't know, the Report for America actually helps subsidize journalists to come into organizations like us and take on particular beats. A lot of them are young journalists under 8 years of experience, but they're also beginning to place mid-career journalists as well. So they're just a great resource that we hope to tap into, if not when we launch, certainly down the road. Will we accept submissions from local non-journalists? I think we will have some kind of opinion op-ed process in place. I think we need to flesh that out a little bit more. And once we have an editor-in-chief, that'll probably be one of the things that we ask him or her to take on and understand, how do we structure this? What we don't want is having an editorial process where people are just posting stuff anonymously and leading to a lot of anger and name calling and all that stuff. I think also we're going to be open to freelancers as well to submit us the story ideas that they have and work with our editorial staff on how to pursue those stories. Right now, we're asking people to submit up story ideas so that we could kind of keep those in our pocket.
Cool. The next question comes from JB McCampbell, and he asks, online feedback to stories can be tricky. How do you allow engagement without trolls dominating the online discussion and reaction to your stories with offensive remarks?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I think we've seen that in this community, and it really detracts from the level of conversation that we should be having. It's fine to disagree, but don't do it in a way that's disrespectful for people, or even in a way that further communicates disinformation. So I think there has to be some kind of process. Frankly, I don't know what that process should be, but there has to be some kind of controlled process where feedback, first of all, you're going to have your name to it, so nothing's going to be anonymous, and that what information that you are debating is accurate. It's fine, but people aren't entitled to their own facts. So there has to be some kind of accuracy and verification of information. That could be time intensive from an editorial process, but we need to figure it out, because I think the demand is there to have it. You can't, in this day and age, not have it, because then people will just turn to social media and say what they want. So you need to manage that outlet.
Yeah, unfortunately, the internet is an incredible ecosystem for trolls. So if I'm sure that if you guys figure out a good method, you'll have to share it with all of us so we can keep the trolls.
Yeah, I think it's a space that everybody's experimenting with. I don't know if there's a really good model out there yet.
Yeah. Okay, so our next question is from Jeff Kramer, and he asks, will you have a brick and mortar home, and will you endorse political candidates?
No, we're not going to endorse political candidates. We're not going to have any kind of agenda like that whatsoever. I just think that speaks to the credibility of news organizations, and when they're endorsing candidates or certain topics and issues, I think it's important for us to maintain our trust with the community and not even come out there on that topic. The brick and mortar piece, yeah, we're down here at WCNY. We may not be much right now, I'm literally in the process of talking to some folks to get some internet in here, and we're going to start getting some office operations in the space here at WNCNY, and eventually we'll grow and plant our roots here. And so that's been a very generous offer from WCNY to have us be down here.
Okay, so
But I will emphasize that we are going to still maintain our independence, and so we're independently operating as a separate newsroom. But certainly there are opportunities to partner with WCNY, especially on some multimedia production of content.
I would imagine too that, I don't know, I think public broadcasting has a pretty favorable, if you were to poll, most people have a favorable opinion of it. So I probably don't think people reject you being in their office.
Yeah. I mean, polling has shown that PBS, productions like the NewsHour are the most reputable there are in this country.
Okay, so the next question is from Courtney Black, and she asks, do you have a launch time frame in mind, or is it just contingent on getting all the other staff together and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. We don't have a specific date yet, but a lot of that will be determined on our staffing. But we are talking about ways that we can begin to start producing original content without having a full publication and website developed. You can do that through social media channels, through our email newsletter. We actually have an email newsletter right now that we're sharing about once a month that shares information about our organization as well as the nonprofit news movement. There have been a couple of times a great photographer, Ben Clayton, in this community submitted a photo essay that he had worked on a couple of years ago, and we put that out there. So we're interested in doing that as a way to give the community a little bit of taste of what we're thinking and let them respond to it, and that'll help inform our editorial process in the long run.
Okay, the next question comes from Kim Margosian, and she says, do you feel Syracuse has untapped journalism potential?
Yes, definitely. There are so many former journalists, and when I say former journalists, I include photographers, videographers in this community. Some of them are retired. Some of them, like myself, I mean, my background, I started 10 years in journalism, got tired of it. I was tired of where it was, and I walked away from it, not thinking I'd ever come back. And so we've heard from many of those people when we launched, either emailing or extending us a call or just seeing them in the community. So, and the other thing is, we got the Newhouse School. We have a producer of nationally, if not internationally recognized journalism program, if not the top digital journalism program in the country. So there is such enormous talent in this community. Clearly our potential hasn't been tapped. The other thing on that I will mention is, I think the definitions of media markets are no longer relevant. And so, and what I mean by that, it's largely been, markets have been defined by population, and therefore the resources and the advertising revenue tied in to the people that you can reach through broadcasting or through the distribution of a newspaper. Media markets, if you kind of go back historically, were defined based on how much and the time it took to go back to your newsroom, write a story, send it off to the presses, put it on a truck, and get it out to the people in 2 hours. That is no longer the case anymore. And I am very curious to know how that changes the formula of the resources that you have to produce. It used to be, my background in television, you'd go to a small market, and then you would advance your career by going up to a larger market, and the standards of journalism would increase as you go into those larger markets. I think everything about that is being redefined right now. We have some great people in this community with some great talent that could be doing stuff on par of New York City and the larger local markets in this country.
Cool. Well, Courtney Black, who is one of the Strathmore speakers, board members and founding members, she privately messaged me, and I'm not going to mention names who may or may not be in the Zoom room with us, but she said a few of them might be here. So, Eric's looking if you're out there. Yeah, that's interesting because one thing that I was thinking too is when you're talking about democracy and the role of local news in democracy and how markets aren't defined by population anymore. And it also seems like our communities are less defined by our geographic location than where we are, what we're being fed by the Facebook algorithm or who we're following on Instagram or TikTok. Do you think that something like Central Current could actually help get us out of those silos? Because
Yeah, definitely. So, we need to have some kind of focus for our audience because we need to put a strategy around that and how to reach them. We define our audience in really a 6-county area. We include Oneida. Usually, Oneida is not included, at least the way the state defines our region. They define it as Oswego, Cortland, Onondaga, Madison, and did I say Cortland already? Oswego County. We include Oneida, and that's largely because of the similarities of the systems that we operate within. That's a population of 1 million people. Now, to kind of give you that perspective, I didn't mention this as an example because I had others in there, but we looked at the Vermont Digger up in Vermont. Started off as a very small operation. A woman who was a very go-getter was laid off, I think, from the Burlington Free Press, I believe was the paper up there. And she started producing content. Really good story, shed some light on some corruption on publicly funded economic development projects up in Vermont. And then some people got noticed and said, you need to put a business plan together and start engaging the audience and growing that audience. And now they serve all of Vermont. They went from her working for nothing to now they have a newsroom at their multimedia or multi-million-dollar annual budget. I think they have close to 30 journalists now, and they serve an audience of 600,000 people who live in Vermont, plus everybody else who lives around the world who has interest in Vermont affairs. That's 600,000. Central New York has a population of 1 million people if you include Oneida County. If you don't include Oneida County, it's still 700 or more than 700 people. So that tells me what kind of potential we have to grow our organization in the long run.
Awesome. So the next question is from Carol Haran, and she asks, will this be a free service, or is there going to be like a subscription or?
No subscription. It'll be our goal is to have it free and accessible. We don't even care if other media outlets even publish our stories. Just make sure they credit where it comes from.
Cool. And do you have any plans for an app or anything like that, or is that that's far down?
I think that's probably far down. That's I think resource intensive. As I said, we're going to start small and build on those successes.
Cool. Okay. And Patty Black asks, do you think the new type of journalism might hold potential for dispelling some of the divide between urban and rural audiences?
Oh, definitely. And if you go on our website, with intention, I put a line in there, we all share the same governing institutions. Okay, we do. There's a lot of parochialism. We know that. One of the things I've studied in my policy days was, the government divisions and how we define ourselves based on villages, cities, and whatever. But the reality is we're all interconnected. We all come to Syracuse. If you're living in the outlying areas, you come to Syracuse for the shows and the cultural events that take place in this community. So we're all interconnected in one way or the other. And that our editorial strategy needs to reflect that. Again, in the short run, I think we're where we are when we start with the resources. We'll start small. We'll be focused on Syracuse, but certainly the long run, we need to be covering rural communities. I live out in Madison County, and I could tell you, there are stories out there that just aren't being covered.
Cool. All right. I think if anybody else has any other questions, please type them in the chat. And hang out in case anybody's thinking of them. One last question from me, I guess, would be, one of the things that has been brought up, especially by the pandemic, is the lack of significant or robust internet infrastructure in the rural areas. And do you think that is it potentially, since you're not going to be printing an actual physical newspaper, is that a barrier to reaching that community, and showing them that their voice is being heard, or that their issues are, making it onto the local news platform?
Yeah, it may. I mean, it's hard for me. I'm not an expert on that particular issue. I do know there are issues with internet connectivity. Most have dial-up. A lot of them don't have where it is now with fiber optic or broadband access. I know the state government has been very active, even the federal level as well on that. What's kind of interesting, there's a lot of hype and promises about 5G and cellular technology, and what that will do to kind of leapfrog the wired environment in those communities. So I think, it's been interesting to see how that might help. And just kind of anecdotally, in one of my former lives, I did a lot of work on the international front in international development. And you saw that leapfrogging in a lot of countries in Africa, and where I was focused on in Central and Eastern Europe, coming out of communism, where they didn't have the wired infrastructure. But every time I'd go into Eastern Europe, everybody had a cell phone. I didn't even have a cell phone, but everybody had a cell phone, because when they were modernizing, they were creating the wireless technology to communicate. So I'm kind of curious to see how that resolves the rural digital divide that we do have.
Awesome. Okay, so next question. Oh, well, actually, first, Jeff Kramer also says, not a question, but I guess New Bedford Light is worth a look.
Okay, great. I see that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that is, Jeff, but we'll take a look. Okay, and then Courtney Black asks, any plans to launch a supporting podcast a la David Plotz's Citycast? I've never listened to that podcast either. I'm sorry, Courtney, but
I'm not familiar with it, but yes, we want to be multimedia. For me, I come from the world of broadcast journalism, and I spent some time as a photojournalist. And I remember when Tony's joining us today, when Tony and his partner Larry first contacted me and said, would you be interested in helping us start this thing? The first thing I said is, internet space is multimedia. And one of the problems of a lot of journalism startups and journalism outlets, they come from print traditions, and they stay. Maybe I'm a little bit biased on that, and I'm creating some parochial darts out there by throwing that out. But it is, I firmly believe multimedia. It is a visual medium. It is an audio medium. And podcast, video should be part of any news operation. That's just how you reach people. And you could tell stories differently using video and audio than what you can in print.
Definitely. Tony actually has his hand up, so I'm going to add him to our little conversation here so he can jump on in. But I did want to say Ashley Kang provided a link, and Jeff Kramer just also chimed in too, that the New Bedford Light is a nonprofit inspired in part by the Digger, and just went up a few months ago, and looks like it's from a small whaling town in New England. So might be a good ally. Okay, I'm going to add the spotlight there, and Tony, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hey, everybody. I wanted to jump in on this point because also I see on this meeting is Dr. Rick Wright, or Captain Rick Wright. Rick is on our board as well. Rick is, Professor Emeritus from Newhouse. I mean, he's got a bio and a resume that if I even began to try to reflect that here, we'd be here all night. But Rick has his expertise in radio. He worked there for many years. So one of the things that I think is important, and maybe he may want to comment, but is that one of the benefits of going to WCNY is they actually have radio stations. So we're, yes, we're in some ways, the sky's the limit for what we can do with that infrastructure and how we can maximize really the assets and the resources that are frankly underutilized right now. So they've offered us radio station. they've offered that Rick is kind of captaining that area for us. Podcasts is the way my kids get their news. We're not unaware of that. I can't program my VCR, but look, even the fact that I said a VCR is dating me, right? But we're aware of that. So it's a big thing. And the one thing I just want to emphasize this, I think Eric said it very strongly and clearly. If we can't find a way to keep trolls off, then there's going to be a block. We're not going to, I think it will be hard, but we're not going to go down that path. I mean, I think Syracuse.com learned that lesson, and they should have, if I have any criticism of them, I think that was something that they should have ended a long, long time ago, much longer than they did. But it's hard. I mean, I understand the temptation for that, but that's all. You can remute me again if you'd like.
That's yes, definitely. You got some thumbs up, Tony, on that one from multiple audience members on the getting rid of the trolls.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's see. So, and then I guess this will be our last comment. Courtney Black said, Citycast is local journalism in podcast form. It's started by a former Slate editor, and looks like they're kind of all over the place. There are many cities across the country. And yeah, okay. So thank you very much. I didn't know if Rick, if you wanted to say anything, we could edge in there.
Hey, folks, there I am. Take myself off mute. Hey, Tony, and to the group, and Eric, outstanding. What we're planning to do, of course, this whole world of digital communications, there's a lot of diffusion of innovation. There's a lot of new ways that we got to use the medium to make things happen. I was in grad school at Virginia State University years ago, and we were talking about defining our industry. And we didn't really come up with a definition, but we did come up with this statement, that our industry will be defined by either the inhumane or the humane ways that we use these great technological instruments to entertain, inform, and educate our mass audiences. And right now, what are we looking at? Some of the most inhumane ways possible in using a most exciting, incredible system of mass communications to inform and educate and teach our populace. But on Central, I'm really proud to be aboard. And of course, the radio side, we basically going to be taking over one of the HD channels at WCNY and developing what I'm going to call a very innovative, outstanding, live, 24-hour a day, 7-day a week radio station concept. Not doing anything new. We're going to get back to what radio's strongest attribute is, its ability to localize. Right now, we're going in radio stations, there's nobody there, all on computers and all. And an incredible, highly efficient, but inexpensive medium, also connected with all the other platforms that Eric has been talking about tonight to get the message out. You mentioned rural communities. People still have radios. And of course, it's available. We look at a lot of our stations in town. If the town were to blow up, you wouldn't know it. There's nobody there in all these incredible technological frequencies of radio that we got. There's nobody at the station. This new facility is going to go back to the old days of live local. One of the things I'm looking at right now in launching our station, hopefully, is develop a Monday through Friday midday live broadcast that would run roughly from 11 o'clock till 2 o'clock, broadcasting from our WCNY studios in the courtyard. We got a nice courtyard facility there, like, food and dining. But what we want to do is let this be the synergy to actually expand our format out. But this particular 11 to 2 o'clock period at WCNY FM and on our HD3 channel is to put together a daily happening, the place to be and the place to tune in if you want to know what is happening up to the date and to the moment and to the place of what's happening in our town. Really want to create an absolute live audience. And of course, spending the first hour to kind of introduce what the problem is. Second hour, food and everything on the table, nice environment, atmosphere to get right to the nitty gritty of what's going on and what are the proposals. And then of course, that last hour to try to look at a futuristic look of where we should be going with regards to the particular topic on the table, where our editors and all of our great Orange Central reporters, we basically bringing those kind of topics to the table. But let's just try to give you sort of a peek view, not creating anything new from radio. When I get back to radio's greatest attribute, its ability to localize with live local personalities. And so we can kind of shape the agenda on a lot of particular scenarios in our city right now. But that's what we're looking at from the radio side of Orange Central. And of course, the labor of love for me, and of course, the misinformation out here, radio's efficiency, its mobility, its instantaneous use. I think we can start making some changes and lay some foundation here and get this city and our area rocking like it should be, Syracuse and Central New York. Okay, I won't hold it up here. I mean, keep talking, but good seeing everybody. Big family here. This is really nice. And
Thanks,
of course, really joy. And everybody stand by. Eric, Tony, and Big L, Larry, and our Mary and all of us on the board. We're working, but we really have some serious problems in our town, and we got to address them. And we need to have it going, not just a once a week show, but daily, look at investigating and presenting ideas and allowing a forum for people to express themselves. And of course, the radio side is the incredible medium that's sitting there that best does that with the right kind of leadership at presenting the ideas from that beautiful source of radio broadcasting. Okay, that's Dr. Rick. So love you. Go Orange. Beat Clemson tomorrow in the Carrier Dome.
Thank you very much, Rick, and I look forward to tuning in once it's.
And you gotta love that voice. We want to make that voice back on the airwaves here in Syracuse.
That is a fantastic radio voice. So it's very exciting. All right,
Scott,
well,
if I could just add just one last word.
Oh, sure, of course.
I'll do this briefly, but hopefully if you guys like what you've heard, we could use your support. We'd love to have the support of this community. If you want to contribute to our startup campaign, we'd love to talk to you. If you want to become a member when we launch our membership program, you can support us that way. But you could drop us a line, info@centralcurrent.org. Visit our website. We'll respond and have that conversation with you. But community support is going to be essential to get this off the ground.
Awesome. Yeah, and when this is being recorded, as everybody knows, when this goes up on Onondaga Freeze and on the Strathmore Speakers website, we'll also have a link to the Central Current website with it. So
Right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you very much to Tony and to Rick for joining us in there at the end. I am going to pass it back to Mary Beth, who's going to tell us about our November speaker. So take it away, Mary Beth.
Okay, thank you, Eric. That was really great. Thank you. We really enjoyed hearing the good news about Central Current's new presence in Syracuse, and we're really looking forward to it. I personally am really looking forward to the radio broadcast side of it right now. On November 18th, our guest speaker will be Jennifer Stroman Galley, a professor of information studies at Syracuse University's iSchool. She's an expert on social media and online interaction, and the title of her talk will be Facebook, Disinformation, and the Digital Pollution of Presidential Politics. Mark your calendars for November 18th for this event. You can find updates on the series at our website, strathmorespeakers.com. And I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope to see you again in November. Bye-bye.